We're holding on page 30. Top line, V'oid nekroim b'nei aliyah. So in this Perek, in Perek Yud, the Alter Rebbe is talking about the difference between a tzadik v'toivelei and a tzadik v'ralei, or also known as a tzadik gomer and a tzadik she'eni gomer. So we explained the difference between the two. The tzadik gomer is someone who has completely transformed his nefesh habahamis. And if the definition of a nefesh habahamis is selfishness and self-centeredness, so the tzaddik doesn't have any of that anymore. So the tzaddik has completely transformed his nefesh habahamis. It's all kedusha, it's all bittul to Hashem. And then we said that the Gemara in Sukkah, so Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says, Ra'isi b'nei aliyah v'hemu atim. I've seen b'nei aliyah, people of elevated status, and there are very few of them. And the Alter Rebbe explains that b'nei aliyah is the madriga of tzadik gomer, the level of tzadik gomer. So why? And there are very few of them. Tzadik v'ralais, there could be many of them. There are many people who are on the lower level of tzadik, but the ultimate tzadik, the highest tzadik, the tzadik gomer, those are very few in number. And they're called b'nei aliyah. And why are they called b'nei aliyah? So the first thing the Alter Rebbe says, which we learned last week, is because the tzadik gomer is someone who's maila, someone who elevates his nefesh habahamis to holiness, as opposed to the tzadik she'eni gomer, who doesn't elevate the nefesh habahamis, but rather suppresses it, and perhaps suppresses it very deeply to the point that you can barely notice that it's there, and perhaps to the point that you can't even notice that it's there. But ultimately, it's suppression. And tzadik gomer is someone who transforms it. And that's why a tzadik gomer is called a ben aliyah, and tzadik and gemurim are called b'nei aliyah. So b'nei aliyah can mean people of elevated status, but it can also mean people who elevate, the one who's elevated the nefesh habahamis. And now the Alter Rebbe is going to start and say, give us another reason why tzadik and gemurim are called b'nei aliyah. Inside, another reason why tzadik and gemurim are called b'nei aliyah, mipnei, because Shegam avidasam bebechinis va'asei toiv. Also, there are avodah in va'asei toiv, b'kiyum ha'torah mitzveisaha. In observing Torah mitzvahs, hulotzoirach gevaya. It's for the sake of aliyah, for the sake of the one above. Umayla mayla adrum ha'maylas, for the highest levels, the highest of all levels. So over here, the Alter Rebbe is saying, beforehand we were talking about the reason why it's called B'nei Aliyah, or gave a reason from Sur Meirah, because the evil has been completely transformed. And now we're talking about Nasei Tov. The Tzadik Gomer, his Torah mitzvahs, is totally for Hashem. Unlike the lower levels, whether it's the Tzadik She'eni Gomer, or whether it's a Beinini, that the reason why we serve Hashem, and the reason why we do Torah mitzvahs, is because we want to connect to Hashem. The point being, to quench the thirst of the neshama, which is thirsty for Hashem. Kamesha Kosav, as the pasuk says, a pasuk which we already encountered earlier on in Perek Daled. Whoever is thirsty, go to water. Water here being a reference to Torah, meaning that if your neshama is thirsty for Hashem, go learn Torah. Kamesha Nizbar b'makam. Meaning to say, most of us, when we're serving Hashem, there's a reason why we're serving Hashem. We're searching for something. So if you want to put it in the simple words, or 21st century terminology, you say we're searching for meaning, we're searching for fulfillment. There's this void within us, just living a life of gashmias and living a life of materialism, and running around just to make $1, it just leaves us feeling empty. We're searching for something higher and something deeper. In Chassidic words, this is the quest of the neshama. The neshama wants to connect to Hashem, and how does it connect to Hashem? Through Torah mitzvahs. That is the tzadik she'eni gomer, or those on the level beneath, which is, if you remember, the tzadik she'eni gomer, his service of Hashem results from a ava kriyish beyesh, a fiery love. What is the nature of fire? It's searching for something. It's trying to reach upwards. That's what it wants. Now that's an amazing avodah. It's an amazing avodah to do Torah mitzvahs from a deep desire to connect to Hashem. Halavai, we should have that avodah. Unfortunately, by many of us, our avodah, our service is by rote. This is the way I've been taught, and this is what I'm used to, and I do this, say this bracha. And then there's a person who has a fiery love and is just yearning to connect to Hashem, and grasps at the opportunity to study Torah, to do a mitzvah, with the full knowledge that this is the avenue, this is how we connect to Hashem. And as amazing as that avodah is, that's not the avodah of a tzadik gomer. Tzadik gomer doesn't have enough shabahamis. There is no selfishness. It's not for him.
There's no me.
There's no me. The tzaddik gomer is doing a mitzvah only for Hashem. And what does that mean to do a mitzvah for Hashem?
Whether he enjoys or doesn't enjoy this.
I understand, but what's the purpose? Why does Hashem need our mitzvahs? So let's look inside. Allah the Pirshu b'tikunim. The Tikkun Zohar, it's explained. Ezu chassid. Who is a chassid? Hamischasedim koinei. One who does kindness with his creator. And then he translates further into Tikkun Zohar, im kana dilei, with his creator's nest. It's related. The word koinei and the word kan, like kari kan tzipar, a nest. So he's doing kindness to Hashem, and he's doing kindness to Hashem's nest. What does that mean? So to understand this, let's talk a little about something which we all do every day. Some of us might be more aware or less aware of its significance, and that is, we say l'shem yichud kuchabrichu u'shechinte. Some people say it very often, every time before they do a mitzvah. In Chabad we say it once a day, before davening, before Baruch Sha'amar, and with the intention that this covers the whole day. But the concept applies nonetheless, either way. So you probably hear daven different nuschos. What nusach do you daven?
Nusach Ashkenaz.
Nusach Ashkenaz. The L'shem Yichud is part of Nusach Ashkenaz also.
I don't recall.
Oh, there's no L'shem Yichud. Okay. Nusach Sfar, that's all over the place. So Nusach Ashkenaz doesn't have L'shem Yichud. If you're familiar with the words L'shem Yichud, Kuchabrichu, U'shechinte. So Nusach Sfar, before Sfir Sa'imer, and before shaking a lulav, before...
All the prophecies say that.
Sorry?
This is Harayani, doesn't it?
But there's, and also L'shem Yichud, Kuchabrichu, U'shechinte. Right, that's part of it.
Part of it. Also, I think by everybody it's by Spirit Ha'omer, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think everybody.
I've seen it by Shema
By Spirit Ha'omer.
By Shema, by which Shema?
in the morning. I think I've seen them
In the morning Shema, in middle of the davening? No.
maybe not. No.
No, I don't see that.
No.
Before Bracha, you usually see
Before
that.
Baruch Shama, no.
For Bar Shama, right? Okay.
And it's by Spirit Ha'omer, I
After
think.
Yishtabach, there's no Hashem Yuchad for Berkas Shema. Come to think of it, then.
Because you're not allowed to interrupt then at that point.
So after.
Anyway, I'm not a bucky in this. I'm not a bucky in this. I know again, in Chabad, the Nusach Hari, we do it once. Before Baruch Sha'amar, it's the only time we do it, period, not before any other mitzvah, not before Sfer Sa'imer, but there are many who do it before many different mitzvahs. We are trying to unite Kucha Brichu, that's an Aramaic, that's Aramaic for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with Shchinte, with the Shechina. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the word HaKadosh, we've been through this before, the word Kedusha means to be separated, something which is separate. HaKadosh Baruch Hu refers to a level of godliness which is separate from this world, which is completely above and beyond, transcends this world, which is completely infinite. We know the different names of Hashem describe different attributes of Hashem and different levels of Hashem. Hashem himself doesn't have a name. In other words, we're talking about the very essence of Hashem remains nameless because there's nothing that can describe Hashem. So when we're talking about various names of Hashem and various descriptions of Hashem, we're talking about as Hashem expresses Himself in different ways. So Kucha Brichu or HaKadosh Baruch Hu is as Hashem is the infinite levels of Hashem which transcend this world, which, by the way, are represented in the letters of Yud and Hei of Hashem's name. Which is why we continue L'Shem Yichud Kucha Brichu Shchinte Liyachada, that we want to unite Shem Yudke Bivavke. We want to unite the Yudke and the Vavke, which, by the way, happens to be connected to this week's parsha with the Parsha Zachar, where Ki Yad al Keis Ka Ein Hashem Shalom. Okay, but that's a different story. Amalek tries to make the disconnect between the Yudke and the Vavke. The Shechina, on the other hand, the word Shechina means something which dwells, something which is present. So Shechina represents the levels of godliness which are within creation, the finite levels of Hashem, the finite levels, the limited levels, the defined levels of Hashem, which enter the world and vivify the world. And what we're trying to do every time we do a mitzvah is we're trying to bring together Kutsha Brichu U'Shchinte. We're trying to bring together Hashem's Bligvul, Hashem's infinite levels, with Shchinte, with the levels that are here in this world. We're trying to connect the Yudke and the Vavke. The Vavke is the lower levels, the Yudke are the higher levels. And by way of trickle-down effect, that also causes that there should be a stronger presence of godliness over here in this world. Not only the godliness which is always present, which is Shchinte, but also a higher level, a more infinite level, which also makes its way down over here.
So the Shekhinah is more pronounced when there's a merge between the two things? What is the
Shekhinah is enhanced. It has more energy, it has more power, it has a higher level of power every time we do a mitzvah. That is what we accomplish when we're doing a mitzvah. By the way, Kutsha Brichu U'Shchinte are the masculine and feminine elements of Hashem, so the Yichud bring them together. It's called a Yichud. It gives birth also to other, whatever, these are Cabalistic concepts. But ultimately, this is the purpose of creation. The reason why Hashem created the world, as we're going to learn at length later on in chapter 36 and on, Hashem created the world because He wants a dira b'tachtoinim. He wants a dwelling place over here in this world.
Why?
That's a good question, why? There's no really good answer to that, but that's what He wants.
He's all over. What do you mean he wants that? The concept is a little bit vague.
Yeah.
He's all over.
He's all over. So
That's
what do you
why I
mean?
asked what?
What, you're compressing him, you're bottling him into a...
Okay, that's a question that we are not going to address today. Later on, we're going to talk about it in Tanya at length.
Simpson? Yeah.
But it has to, bottom line, higher or lower, we're talking about the higher worlds or lower worlds, nothing is about the objective reality from Hashem's perspective. It's all about from the perspective of the creations, of the other. Hashem wants that in a place which is tachtoinim, which is inhospitable to Him, that it should be a keli, it should be a place which becomes hospitable to Him, where He can dwell and feel comfortable at home and not just force Himself upon us. And every time we do a mitzvah, we're accomplishing this slowly but surely. This, which is the concept of Yichud Kutsha Brichu U'Shchinte, we're bringing more oil, more light, more divine energy here into this world, and making the world readier and readier for the time we'll have Dira B'Tachtoinim, which ultimately that will happen when Mashiach comes. So the tzadik gomer, when he's doing a mitzvah, he's not doing it because he has any need for a mitzvah, any desire for a mitzvah, any gain from the mitzvah. He's doing it because he's doing a favor to Hashem, because he knows that that's what Hashem wants, and Hashem's nest. The nest is the Shekhinah. Malchus, for Cabalistic reasons, Hashem's Shekhinah is called the Khan, is called the nest.
Excuse me.
And so the tzaddik, his purpose of avodah is only for Hashem. His mind is set on that Hashem's will be done. Hashem's goal in the creation of the world, Hashem's desire of Dir B'Tachtoinim and Yichud Kutsha Brichu U'Shchinte should happen. That's why the tzaddik does a mitzvah. And that's why the tzaddik gomer is called B'nei Aliyah, because the purpose of his doing a mitzvah is nothing to do with himself, it's only for Hashem. Let's do this inside. We already did it. And the purpose is to unite Kuchabrichu and the Shechina, and thereby to bring down Hashem down here into this world. As it said in Raya Mehemna, Parshas Kiseitse, Kibrodi ishtadol basar avoy v'imay, like a son who makes every effort on behalf of his father and mother, derachem loin, because he loves them, yatir migarmei, more than he loves himself, more than he loves his own body, v'nafshei v'ruchei v'nishmasei, and more than he loves his own neshama. Chulu u'masar garmei l'misa, and he's ready to give himself up to die, if necessary, l'mifrak loin, to redeem them in the event that his parents are in captivity. Chulu k'mishnas barba makamacher. So like a son who loves his father more than he loves himself, the tzadik gomer loves Hashem more than he loves himself, and therefore his avodah is purely for the sake of Hashem. So your question, why does Hashem want?
Yeah, but I have a better question. Well, how does the tzaddik know that that's what Hashem wants intrinsically, unless he learns Tanya?
He learns Tanya, he learns Kabbalah. Okay, it's a good question. But I want to point out that tzaddik doesn't have that question. In other words, the tzaddik's love for Hashem is such that he doesn't ask, why do you want? Like in the course of a relationship.
It's like a blind love.
If your wife tells me, I would like this, and you tell your wife, but why? Explain to me why you like it. If you can explain to me and it makes sense to me, then I'll get it for you. But if it doesn't make sense to me, then I'm sorry, no can do. When we're in a relationship with Hashem, we don't ask why. Because the reason is because He wants. That's the reason. If Hashem wants, for me, that's a good enough reason.
The question is, why does he want it?
The question is, why does He want it? It's a philosophical question, but it doesn't impact our reaction. So you can sit at night and wonder, why does my wife want this? Why does she want the dafka green this and whatever? But there's no what.
When it comes to the relationship, you don't question.
You don't question, you do. And same thing is with Hashem, especially if the tzaddik is not thinking about himself at all, thinking about Hashem. The fact that the one who I love wants this, that's all the reason I need. Not only is it all the reason, it's the best reason. It's the best reason.
Correspondingly, you just answered the question of why Hashem wants it, I think, possibly. Hashem wants it because it's a logical imperative that you want your creatures to love you. That's what. So if your creatures love you, then they created a dwelling place. In other words, He created us, so He wants his creatures to love Him, and that naturally creates a dwelling place. So it's an argument. It's imperative.
So now, sorry?
The meter of tone.
Right.
That's what the Derek Hashem with Ramchal said.
Correct.
Chapter 1.
So we have over here two reasons why tzaddikim are called bnei aliyah. Number one is because they transform the nefesh bahamis to kedusha. The second reason is because the whole purpose of their avodah is for the sake of Hashem. But we have to understand they're both related to each other. How is it possible that my service should be only for Hashem? As long as I have my nefesh bahamis, it's not possible. There's me. So there has to be something in it for me. Only the tzadik gomer who succeeds in transforming his nefesh bahamis to kedusha, he is the one who's able to serve Hashem only for Hashem's sake. That's the simple understanding of it. And that's the tzadik gomer who it's all about Hashem. And again, the tzadik gomer is the one who's not searching for Hashem, but is actually one with Hashem and experiencing Hashem. But Alter Rebbe over here is going to give us another Cabalistical understanding of the connection between the two reasons why a tzadik gomer is called bnei aliyah. And again, this is going to be a very Cabalistical explanation. We'll go through it shortly. Inside, in the brackets, both of these reasons, they both come together. They come together beautifully. Why? So let me talk a little Kabbalistical language. There is something called, in Kabbalah it talks about Mayin Dechurim and Mayin Nukvin. Mayin Dechurim and Mayin Nukvin are male waters and female waters. That's what it translates. Mayin Dechurim is male waters and Mayin Nukvin is female waters. Lekeva. And Dechur is Zachar. And Aramaic, a Zayin becomes a Dalet. But that which is Hebrew, a Zayin, in Aramaic very often becomes a Dalet. So, In Kabbalah, it's explained that there's a process. When we do avodah down over here, when we do our work down here, and specifically when we elevate klipas noiga, something which we discussed in the past, what klipas noiga is, when we use those things in the world that are permitted in the service of Hashem, and thereby elevate their sparks and bring them up to Kedusha. So our work over here, our avodah, which is called Mayin Nukvim, because we are the female in the relationship between us and Hashem. So that is the female waters, which we are Maila. We elevate that up to Hashem, and that elicits a flow of Mayim Duchurim, of divine effluence, the masculine from above. So what do we have over here? The reason why the tzadik gomer, why is he doing his avodah? He's doing his avodah for the sake of Yichud Kodesh Baruch Hu Shechintei, which is also, in different Cabalistic words, to bring down this Mayim Dechurim, to bring down the masculine waters from above, which is the divine light which we bring down. How do we bring down the masculine waters from above? Through the feminine waters. What is the feminine waters? As we just mentioned, when we're mevar, when we elevate and we transform klipas noiga, that is our mayim nukvim, which elicits the mayim dechurim. So the tzadik gomer, he is mevar and elevates and transforms his nefesh bahamis, which is from klipas noiga to kedusha, and thereby brings down the mayim dechurim. So that brings together both of the ideas of bnei aliyah. Idea number one is that he elevates, that's the Mayim Nukvim, that he elevates his Nefesh Bahamis. What does that cause? The Mayim Dechurim, which is the Yichud Kodesh Baruch Hu Shechintei. So these two ideas are, both of them are interrelated, that through the fact that he's Maila and he transforms and elevates his Nefesh Bahamis, that's how you bring down and you cause Yichud Kodesh Baruch Hu Shechintei. So the two reasons why tzaddikim are called Bnei Aliyah are really along the same lines. We'll do this inside. Through the fact that we are mevader, that we elevate the different sparks that are in klipas noiga, ma'alin mayin nukvim, we elevate to Hashem these feminine waters. Then v'nasim yichudim el yonim, then we have all these yichudim that happen above, the yichud kodesh baruch hu shechintei, and that causes lahoyred mayin dechurim, that causes the flow of the male waters. Shehein meimei chasadim shbachol mitzvah o mitzvah. Those are the waters of Hashem's chesed, which are within every single mitzvah meramach mitzvah asay, of the 248 mitzvahs. Every time we do a mitzvah, which that is, we're being mevarer, we're elevating something, the object with which we're doing the mitzvah, even if it's possibly sometimes part of our body, the part of the body that's doing the mitzvah. Every mitzvah elicits a certain form of mayim dechurim of these male waters. Shekulan, that all the mitzvahs in bechinas chasadim, they're all Hashem's chesed or mayim dechurim, and all of them cause a flow of Hashem's, the divine waters. The hainu amshachas kedushas alakusa yizbarach, which means bringing down Hashem's holiness and godliness melmayl lamata, from above down here, lislabish petachtoinim, to come into this world. Commission is bar b'makam acher, as explained elsewhere. So we finished Perek Yud. As I promised last week, we'll talk a little about Purim now, in connection to this Perek. Because the big question that we have over here in this Perek is, how is this relevant to us? Talking about a tzadik and bnei aliyah and serving Hashem for the purpose of serving Hashem. And I believe that an analysis of the story of Purim actually will answer us this question, will give us the answer to this question. And we'll start off with a Purim question, which we know that one of the mitzvahs of Purim is that a person is obligated to become drunk on Purim ad liyada, until he knows not the difference between Adar Haman leBarach Mardechai, between Christus Haman and blessed is Mardechai. Now, I don't know how many of you over here are from birth. I don't know if any of you over here perhaps are Bali Tshuva, but I can just imagine that someone, people are from, they grow up with it. It's just one of those things that we learn to live with, like kaparas, So it's strange. Okay, we do it anyways. But someone who's a Bal Tshuva and comes from the outside, there's a mitzvah to get drunk. And today's St. Patrick's Day, so it might be a little, if we were Irish maybe, but we're Jews. And the Torah doesn't really, we don't find the Torah condones, that the Torah should condone drunkenness and excessive drunkenness. The Rambam is very clear about Yom Tov that we're not supposed to get drunk on Yom Tov, even though we're supposed to be happy. And you don't get drunk. What's this all about? And it's a mitzvah to get drunk on Purim. It's strange. And it's not only is it a mitzvah to get drunk, not only is it a mitzvah to get drunk, apparently halacha, exceedingly drunk, but the commandment is, the mitzvah is, to get drunk to the point that you don't know the difference between Arar Haman and Baruch Mordechai. Now tell me, a Yid, at the height of his drunkenness, is not going to know, you tell him Haman, he's not going to know good or bad, you can tell him Mordechai. And if a person is in the state where he doesn't know the difference between Haman and Mordechai, that's an accomplishment. That's what we want. We're like, yeah, we want you to get you don't know that good, bad, it's all no difference, Haman and Mordechai. And that's the mitzvah. It's the strangest thing. It's the strangest mitzvah. So again, like from people, we're used to it, so we don't. Sometimes we don't stop to analyze and think, what does this mean?
It's an elevation.
It's an elevation, what, of Haman?
No, of us.
Of us. To what?
Because if we think evil of Haman, we deserve that gezerah. So if we think evil of Haman, we're suppressing.
Listen, there are many answers that are brought, and maybe that's one answer. But we're going to talk about an answer which the Alter Rebbe gives, not here in Tanya, but in Torah. But to understand this, we first have to talk about something else. The Gemara says in Masechta Shabbos that somewhat famous Gemara that before Matan Torah, so Hashem lifted up, he lifted up the mountain over Klal Yisrael, and he told them, if you accept the Torah, that's good, and if not, Sham take for Aschem, you're going to be buried here. Also a strange Gemara. This was the morning of Matan Torah, right? It says, "Vayisatzu Yisrael besachti sahar." The Yidden are underneath the mountain, and this Chazal say. Now, the day earlier, yesterday, the Yidden proclaimed Nasa v'Nishma, right? Ultimate and unconditional acceptance of the Torah. You know, imagine you go and you propose to a woman. Would you marry me after all the courting? And she says, yes. I'm going to marry you. And then you pull out a gun and say, okay, are you going to marry me? If not, I'll kill you. I just said yes. Now I'm going to say no. We just said Nasa v'Nishma. We just accepted the Torah. Why are you picking up the mountain over my head? What happened?
Maybe we were drunk when we said it.
It wasn't Purim. Now we know that these kinds of Mamari Chazal don't necessarily have to be taken literally. According to most Mefarshim, I mean, there are some radical views. There's the Shalah, but most of the Chazal understand that many of these Medrashim we have to understand them at a metaphoric level. They're not literal. The Alter Rebbe explains that what does this mean? Kaf aleim har gigis. In Chassidus and in Kabbalah, the word mountain is associated with Hashem's chesed. We know that the Gemara says Leika Avram, who was called a har. Avram, whose chesed was called a mountain. We say Lecha Hashem hagedula v'hagevura. Gedula, greatness is always the midas chesed. So a mountain shows on chesed. Hashem lifting up the mountain over our heads, and kegigis, like a barrel. In other words, He lifted over our head and He surrounded us with it. He hugged us with it. Means that Hashem absolutely embraced us with His love. And this was a process that had begun already a few weeks earlier by Yetzias Mitzrayim, when Hashem absolutely showered us with His love and with His miracles, one after another after another, to the point that we didn't have a choice whether to receive the Torah. Didn't have a choice. We know the pasuk says, "Kamayim apanim lapanim keilev ha'adam la'adam." Just like water reflects a face, so too hearts reflect each other. When one person showers another with love, real love, genuine love, the other heart reciprocates. So when the pasuk says, "Ahafti eschem amar Hashem," Hashem says, "I love you," and this is Hashem's love. And so just as Hashem is infinite, His love is infinite. And you can imagine when we experienced and we felt that love, the revelation of that love, which was what was happening at that point in time, we had no choice but to say Nasa v'nishma. So it doesn't mean that Hashem literally held a mountain over our head, but it means that Hashem held, held His love over us. Later on in Tanya, in Perik Mem Vav, which we're going to get to in a long time in Yirtz Hashem. So the Rebbe describes this. He gives a mashal. He says the idea of Kamaim Apanim Lapanim Kein Lev Adam LaAdam, the fact that love elicits love, is true by any two people. But he says, how much more so you can imagine if a great king shows his love, his incredible love, to a simple person, not only a simple person, a lowly person, a person who's disgusting and he's lying in garbage, and the king comes down to him from his place of glory together with all his ministers, and picks him up from the garbage and brings him into his palace, a room within a room, to a place where no other servant and no other minister is even allowed to go in there. And the king unites with him in a complete unity and kisses him and hugs him. So he says, even if this person has a heart of stone, his heart will go out for love for this king who has not. And that's exactly what Hashem did to us. We were in Mitzrayim, we were in filth, and Hashem comes down from His place of glory together with all His malachim and everything. He pulls us out of Mitzrayim and He brings us to Mount Torah. And we had no choice but to say no. Not that we felt compelled, not that we wanted otherwise. To the contrary, there was nothing more in the world we wanted more than to connect to Hashem and to receive His Torah and mitzvahs. However, the Gemara continues and says, Mikan Meida Rabba La'iraisa. Because of this, because Hashem held the mountain over our head, so therefore we always had an excuse. We're always able to tell the Eibishter, we only accepted the Torah because we were compelled to. We were forced to. Didn't have a choice. And we know that in halacha, if there's a transaction which is a forced transaction, so the transaction has no validity. So similarly, the Yidden were always able to come to Hashem and say we were forced. Now, in the simple interpretation, we say we were forced. You held the mountain over our heads and you threatened to kill us. But also, according to the Cabalistic, Hasidic understanding, which we just explained, which is that Hashem showered us with His love, the same rationale applies. We come to Hashem and say, yeah, we accept the Torah, but you didn't give us another option. The way you treated us, we had no choice. You manipulated our emotions. You gave us everything. You gave us so much. You revealed your love to us. Maybe we really didn't want the Torah. Maybe deep down, we didn't really want the Torah.
It's too hard.
But the Gemara continues and says that this Meidah Rabbah, this excuse that we had, only lasted until Purim. Only lasted until Purim. This is what the Gemara says in Masechta Shabbos. Why? Because v'hadar kibluha b'mei Achashverosh, the Gemara says. In times of Achashverosh, then we received the Torah, and then we accepted it fully, ba'ahava, with love, but with no duress, and therefore the Meidah Rabbah disappeared. What does that mean? So the Rebbe explains, and I'm adding in a little commentary also, but this is the basic idea that he says. There is no time in history which was more polar opposite from Matan Torah than was Purim. If Matan Torah was the height of God's revelation and the revelation of His love, Purim was the sum opposite. Hashem's name doesn't appear in the Megillah. Megillah's Esther, what does the word Esther mean? Hiddenness. The Gemara says, Esther men ha-Torah menayin. Where do we have Esther from in the Torah? V'anechi Esther. We were in Galus. It's the lowest, it's the only Yom Tov that we celebrate that we're in Galus. Even Hanukkah, even though it happened after Purim, but Hanukkah was during the times of the second Beis HaMikdash. After close to 1,000 years of being in Eretz Yisrael and having the Beis HaMikdash and the Mishkan and experiencing the revelation of God, and we know every time he went to the Beis HaMikdash, there were the 10 miracles, as described in Pirkei Avos, which everyone was able to see. The Yidden are thrown into Galus. Now we're in Galus also, but you can't compare anything to the first time. The first time is always the hardest. And they didn't know. Are they ever going to be redeemed? Maybe they messed up so badly, and we know they messed up. We know there was, Avodah Zarah, and Gilui Arayis, and Shvichas Damim. Is Hashem going to bring us back to Eretz Yisrael? Or did Hashem finally decide that this idea of having a chosen nation maybe isn't the best idea? Maybe committing to one nation is not a good idea, considering that you don't know what's going to happen to them afterwards. They might end up betraying you, as Taka Klal Yisrael did. But the Yidden had one thing, one hope still going for them. And what was that? Yes, they're in Galos, but there's a prophecy. What's the prophecy? That after 70 years, they're going to be returned to Eretz Yisrael. Imagine it's keeping them going, this Amunah and this B'tachan. 70 years comes, 70 years goes, and the Yidden are still in Galus. That was Achashverosh's big feast. And the third year of his kingdom, what was he celebrating? That 70 years had passed, and that's when he pulled out all the kelim of the Beis HaMikdash, and he made this feast. Now, obviously, that was a mistaken calculation, but it wasn't only Achashverosh who made the mistake. Look at the Gemara, Masechtas Megillah, it says that Daniel made the same mistake. Daniel also thought the 70 years had gone by. And in fact, the whole thing, most of the Vuhu Rachum that we say on Mondays and Thursdays from a lot of it is from Daniel, and a lot of it is a tefillah which we have in Sefer Daniel, which Daniel says after he figured the 70 years were up, so he gave him the whole tefillah to Hashem, asking Hashem, please, have Rachmanis, Al Shem Moiseinu, Al Yirash Nikra Shimcha Aleh, right? Daniel, this is Daniel, he made the same mistake. How did Daniel make this mistake? It's a good question. Maybe the Eibishter wanted that everyone should make this mistake. Bottom line is, the Yidden, the Klal Yisrael were under the impression 70 years is over.
What's the mistake?
What was the beginning?
Mistake was the calculation, right? Because the pasuk says, "Melois leBavel," when Bavel has 70 years to Bavel, that's when it's going to happen. So there were a few different calculations. There was the calculation was when Nebuchadnezzar became king. That's the calculation that Belshazzar made. Which that he also, when he was killed, the handwriting on the wall incident. And then you have another calculation was when Bavel conquered Eretz Yisrael, which was around, I think if I remember correctly, 11 or 12 years before the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. That was the calculation of Daniel and Achashverosh. That was the first Galus. That was the Galus Yechanya. In Megillah we say that Mordechai went Im Hagoyla Asher Hagla, right? Im Yechanya Melech Yehuda. That was the first exile was around 11 or 12 years before the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. That's when they took the king Yechanya, and all the Talmidei Chachamim also were brought to exile to Bavel. And he set up a puppet state with Tzidkiyahu as the king. Around 10, 11 years later, Tzidkiyahu rebelled, and that's when the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. So ultimately, the 70 years was from the destruction of the first Beis HaMikdash. 70 years time. But for some reason, no one was able to figure that out, that it's 70 years from the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. Everyone thought it was something else. I guess Hashem has a way of making sure that people understand what they understand. So you can imagine what the morale of the Yidden then, at that point in time. You can imagine. Talk about Hanochi Haster, this complete Hester, this complete hiddenness of Hashem. The opposite of Matan Torah. Absolute opposite of Matan Torah, when the Yidden were smothered by Hashem's love and the revelation of Hashem. What happens next? We have a wonderful man, Haman, who stands up and decides he's killing all the Yidden. He's killing all the Yidden. Okay, so by now, it's all over. In other words, by now the Yidden should realize that, they're not, 70 years passed, Hashem didn't redeem them, they're all being killed. They're abandoned, it's over, right? It was a nice ride, it was a good while it lasted, 1,000 years. It's over. And try to put yourself in that frame of mind, in that position. And the Alter Rebbe says The Gezerah was Lahashmid, Larig, Abi, to destroy and to eliminate. Eskola Yehudim, all Yehudim. What is a Yehudi? What is a Yehudi? So the Gemara says, Masechtas Megillah, the why was Mordechai called a Yehudi? He wasn't from Yehuda, he was from Binyamin. Why was he Yehudi? So the Gemara says that Kol HaKoifer B'Avodah Zarah is Nikra Yehudi. Whoever rejects Avodah Zarah is called a Yehudi. Yehudi means the word Haidah, acknowledging Hashem as the master. Yes.
Before you continue the Mahaleh, did Mordechai also miscalculate on the 7 years?
It doesn't say so beferish, but considering that Mordechai and Daniel were together in Shushan, I'm assuming if Mordechai knew, why wouldn't he tell Daniel?
Yeah.
I haven't seen beferish that statement. The Gemara says about Daniel, that after Daniel he also, the Megillah Daf Yud Aleph.
How could a Navi make a mistake? Daniel's a Navi, right?
Daniel was a
He
Navi.
had a direct line upstairs.
Not a Navi doesn't mean they have a direct line in every single area.
Even Moshe.
He said Hashem wanted people to be confused for some reason, right?
Yeah, listen, that's tangential. That's taking us off topic.
All right, I'm sorry about that.
So the Gzeira was only on those who rejected Avodah Zarah. Meaning to say, this is according to Alter Rebbe, this is a misconception to compare Haman to Hitler. That Haman said, no, if you're not a Yehudi, you don't identify as Yid anymore. If you embrace Avodah Zarah, you're fine, you're safe. The Gzeira was on the Yehudim. Gzeira was on those people who rejected Avodah Zarah.
Like today, we reject, the
Everything is Avodah Zarah.
Yeah,
We're going to learn about that later in Tanya. Yeah.
yeah. That's simple.
And what happened? Despite the fact that it made absolute no sense for the Yidden to remain Yidden, think about it with the Helm v'Haster. You know, it says Esther min Torah menayin v'anoichi haster aster. The Baal Shem Tov says, what is v'anoichi haster aster? 2 times hiddenness. Baal Shem Tov says, and sometimes something is hidden, but you know it's hidden. And sometimes it's so hidden you don't even know there's anything hidden over there. That Hashem, in that time, it's not just that Hashem is hidden, but the hiddenness to the point that you doubt B'chlal whether there's anything there at all.
Who would have been exempt from Haman's Gezerah if it's only Yehudim? Who would be
Anyone who rejected Yiddishkeit and embraced Avodah Zarah. Anyone who converted out, anyone who was
to what? Converted to what?
whatever the pagan belief was at that time. Says the Alter Rebbe, for 11 months, because that's how long it lasted, this Gezerah. Because for 11 months, everyone was quaking in their boots. No one knew what's going to turn out. The Gezerah was on Yud Gimel Nisan. That's when the Gezerah was signed. 2 days before Pesach. And it was meant to be implemented 11 months later, on Yud Gimel Adar. After 11 months. For 11 months, says the Alter Rebbe, not one Yid left the fold. Not only did not one Yid leave the fold, no one even thought of leaving the fold. Think about that. Now there's no more Meidar Rabbalai Raisa. The excuse that you gave, that maybe the reason why we accepted the Torah was because Hashem smothered us with His love. We weren't really so interested in it. We did it only because of the pressure. Positive pressure. Positive pressure. Let's be clear. But still, it's pressure. If the only reason why I accepted the Torah when there's positive pressure, then in a state of Purim, you run, you bolt, and you run like crazy. If in a situation like in Purim, if in such a situation, you remain, what does that show? That shows that the connection to Hashem and your acceptance of the Torah is absolute and is complete. And more than that, that means that you remain connected to Hashem even when it makes no sense to remain connected. Because the connection is the essence of who I am. And when something is an essential part of me, it can't be otherwise. Whether or not I understand it, whether it makes sense, whether it feels right, it is who I am. I think it's the Medrash says, but Yid says, "Oh, Yehudi Eitz Aluf." Either I'm a Yid, either you can hang, you can crucify me, or a Yid, but there's no other options. My relationship with Hashem transcends that which I understand and that which I feel. It is who I am, and that's why throughout the years, we'll talk about this more at length later on in Tanya in chapters 18 and 19. Yidden en masse give up their lives al kiddush Hashem. Giving up your life al kiddush Hashem is the ultimate definition of the opposite of Matan Torah. It's the opposite. When the Yid accepted Torah, it's because they were the winning bandwagon. It was the heyday. Being a Yid was the best thing in the world. Seas are splitting before you. Bread is raining down from the sky. Of course I want to be a Yid. But how about to be a Yid when it's going to cost you your life? What is that? That's much deeper. Purim is much deeper than Shavuos. Much deeper than Shavuos. And that's why it says, when Mashiach comes,
Purim will be the Yom Tov.
Purim is going to be the Yom Tov. All the Yom Tovim are going to be fuzzy. What? We're going to keep them still but they're not going to be important. In the words of the Alter Rebbe, Shragi betiras, like holding up a candle in the sunlight. It's irrelevant. All the Yom Tovim compared to the revelation. When Mashiach comes, we're not going to make a big deal out of them. Yeah, we'll eat the matzah, and yeah, we'll shake the lulav. What's the Yom Tov that's going to get us excited when Mashiach comes? It's Purim. Because Purim is the essential core relationship that a Yid has with Hashem. And there's nothing greater than that.
So then why did we have to do tshuva? So on Purim, why does it say when Achashverosh gave Haman his ring, it scared them more than all the Nevi'im put together? Why did they have to do tshuva if they just hunkered down and stayed Yidden? What was
that is tshuva.
What?
Hunkering down and staying a Yid is the biggest tshuva that there can be.
They could have converted. They would have been
Oh, that was the tshuva.
Tshuva means returning to yourself. Tshuva means returning to who you really are and shedding all the layers and all the garbage. That's what tshuva is.
Oh, so that was the tshuva. It's deep.
So let's go back to Adl Yada now.
How do you answer that?
How do you answer that? Haman represents everything that's bad. Haman represents everything that's bad and everything that's evil. Klipa, the ultimate klipa of Amalek. You don't get worse than that. You know, even you can have a piece of pig. There's no mitzvah to destroy it. Amalek, you have to destroy it. That's, in other words, it's talk about the ultimate klipa that there is. The only analog I can find for it is Chametz on Pesach. And Mordechai is the ultimate in Kedusha. And throughout the year, what do? We are involved in Yoda, Bein Arer Haman Lebarach Mordechai. I understand why Mordechai is good and why Mordechai is blessed, and why Haman is evil and cursed. It makes sense. It feels right. But there's something deeper than that. There's something deeper than my knowledge. And that's what we touch on Purim. Purim, we're supposed to reach a level. Meaning to say, of course, Mordechai is blessed. And of course, Mordechai representing Torah and mitzvahs and Kedusha and Hashem, that's blessed and that's what I embrace. And I absolutely and utterly reject Haman and everything that he stands for. Utter, it's cursed. But why? Not because Yada, not because I understand it, but because that's essentially who I am. It's my essential bond.
Wow,
That's what Purim is all about. Purim is about reaching higher. You know, Matan Torah is about Yada. Everything makes sense and everything feels right and everything is good. But sometimes you have to reach deeper than that. And sometimes to reach deeper. So the Chas v'Shalom that a Yid on Purim is thinking, you know, Baruch Haman, or the opposite of that. That's not the point. It's not the point. The point is that you reach the point within yourself where Baruch Haman is absolute. It's not logical. It's beyond logic. It's who I am. My relationship with Hashem is not something that Baruch Mordechai. My relationship with Hashem, as represented by Mordechai, is who I am. And sometimes, to reach a little deeper, you take a little Chaim, because we're so used to everything, processing it through our minds and everything. The L'chaim reduces our I don't want to, not inhibitions, it's the wrong word. It reduces our, it allows us to reach a little deeper within us and access a truer place. And that's what we're trying to accomplish on Purim. How's this relevant to our period in Tanya? We see that in the time of Purim, by the way, just this is not a vart that Rabbi says, but this is a thought that I had. It says, "Kol ha'miyad masidim lihibatel al yom tovim b'kambatel yimais HaMashiach," except for Purim. What is yimais HaMashiach? So after Mashiach comes, yimais HaMashiach. But the truth is, if you look in the Gemara in Avodah Zarah, so the Gemara in Avodah Zarah divides the world into three, the 6,000 years into three parts. The first 1,000 years was Toyu, was chaos, because there was no Torah. So Shnei Alafim Toyu, Shnei Alafim, the next 2,000 years is Torah, and the next 2,000 years is Yemais HaMashiach. So maybe we can say that all Yom Tovim are bottled except for Purim now. We're not waiting till Mashiach comes now. Meaning what? That every other Yom Tov is about revelation from above. And we don't have that now. So it's hard for us to relate to Pesach. We're enslaved. It's hard for us to relate to a Shavuos. Maybe I'm not in that level of Torah. The one Yom Tov that we can relate to at all times is Purim. Because Purim is about the essence of who I am, and that never changes. Never changes. From the moment that I'm born till 120, who I am and my essential connection to Hashem always remains. And by the way, we're not going to go there, but this connects also to today, which is Zayin Adar. Because Zayin Adar was a big player in Purim. Haman was all happy that he thought that Moshe died, but really Moshe was born. What's the significance of Moshe being born? So it's really related. Moshe being born shows in the essence of a Yid. Because when a person is born, what is born? The essence of who he is. And the essential connection with Hashem. Moshe's birth symbolizes the birth of Klal Yisrael. The birth of Klal Yisrael is this essential core connection which we have with Hashem. Before the baby understands anything or feels anything or knows anything, it's connected to Hashem because it's a Yid. That's the birth. Zayin others. That's the connection between Zayin Adar and Purim. So what do we have over here? We have a generation in times of Purim, and we try to tap into this and experience this every year as Purim comes again, of people who their service of Hashem and their embrace of Hashem was irrational. So why did they do it?
Why they what?
Why did they do it? It was irrational. It was going to get them all killed. They didn't even know if Hashem is interested in them anymore. Complete Halav Hester. So why did they do it? So we answer that question. But let me ask you a question. Why does the tzadik gomer do his work?
Well,
It's only for Hashem. It's not about gaining anything.
nothing for me.
Nothing for me. The Purim story tells us that at the core of every single one of us there's a tzadik gomer. We think it's so out there. Well, I'm going to serve Hashem and it's not about me at all. It's only about Hashem. Tzadik gomer, it's the most amazing level, and it is. And it's something that to live with that awareness in its truest form on a daily basis, that's something which most of us cannot accomplish. That's something which is reserved for the tzadik gomer. At the same time, we have to know the story of Purim tells us at the core of every one of us there is a tzadik gomer. What's the difference between us and the tzadik gomer? Is that the tzadik gomer lives his daily life infused by that core essential attachment to Hashem, what we call the pintel yid, the etzem haneshama, the essence of the neshama. The tzadik gomer, that's who he is. There are no layers, there is no coverings, there's no nothing, but we all have it inside us. And every single yid, because we have this tzadik gomer within us, when push comes to shove, when we're pressed, we're yidden, we serve Hashem, and everything else ceases to matter. And to contrary, actually, the more a yid is pressed, the more right. The Gemara that you were saying that when he took off his ring, the more a yid feels his Yiddishkeit threatened,
More resolve.
And it's completely irrational. Completely irrational. Suddenly it erupts within you, the neshama comes out like a fire.
So why they wouldn't let him be Mesudasha?
Yeah.
It's
hard to fathom.
Yes, there's two extreme contrasts.
That's correct.
How that's possible?
To the contrary, it's proving the point.
How?
It's if you're talking about a bunch of tzaddikim, and they're all so holy, so then they said they're going all Mesiras Nefesh. So you say, okay, but look at us. No, it wasn't a bunch of tzaddikim. It was Yidden who were on a very low level. And by the way, this illogical relationship between us and Hashem works two ways. Hashem's relationship with us is also illogical. When the Navi Hosea came to Hashem and told him, why don't you just switch the Jews for another nation? He told him. So it's a story for the Gemara that talks about the Gemara. And Hashem told him, basically the whole story, Hashem told him he could get married to a woman who was a prostitute and have children, then throw out the lady and the children from the house. And he says, I can't do that, it's my children. Hashem says, so what do you want from me? You want me to throw out my children? I can't. Hashem says, I can't exchange them, they're my kids, they're my nation. So it works, in other words, the core connection is both ways. Dafke the Yid, who went and ate by the Suda of Achashverosh,
Had a good time.
He is the one that when push comes to shove, is still 100% absolutely committed to Hashem.
Right.
That's the Chiddush. Not that Mordechai. The Chiddush is the Yitake went and ate by the Suda of Achashverosh. Every Yid. What? It's not a hypocrite. No. There's who I really am, and then there's.
It's before the sin of sin.
What do you call a hypocrite? When a father has a child and loses his temper at the child, and maybe hits the child, does he really love his child? At its very essence, does he love his child?
Yes.
So is he a hypocrite? The word hypocrite he's not a hypocrite. He lost himself, in other words, and his core was covered up, but the core is always there. His behavior were inconsistent with what he really feels and what he really believes and what he really thinks. And that's what a Yid is. We're not hypocrites, we're inconsistent. And the point is, the knowledge that at the very core of every single one of us, there's this tzadik gomer, impacts our avodah. Later on in Perek Memalach, the Rebbe is going to talk about this. That even though, will I ever be able to reach a madrega where I'll say that all my Torah mitzvahs is all straight for Hashem? The answer is probably not. But because it's the truth of who I am, I can try acting that way. And since it's the truth of who I am, that avodah also is a correct avodah. In other words, before doing a mitzvah, again, in Perek Memalach, chapter 41, the Rebbe is going to talk about this more. Take a moment to think, yes, L'shem yichud kutshabrichu shchintei. I'm doing this for Hashem. Can I say this with every single fiber of my heart? I have this feeling? Perhaps not. But the words that I'm saying are a reflection of the inner truth of who I am. And therefore, there is truth and validity to those words and those thoughts also. And that's something we try to do. We think of ourselves, we are Hashem's children. We love Hashem. We're doing it for Him. And that is really who I am. And even if my heart is not 100% there, that's the deepest part of me. And that's what I'm going to try to think when I'm doing a mitzvah also.
It's our inner potential.
It's our inner potential. And that's how the story of Purim illuminates this idea of tzadik gomer and gives to understand how it does have a relevance to every single one of us. Afreilach Purim, everyone. And I will see you, Meir Hashem, in 2 weeks' time.
Reuben, you know.